Two guys in fake HOA security polos are locked in my armory right now, pounding their fists bloody against 6 inches of steel that is not going to move. I'm sitting in my workshop with a lukewarm cup of coffee, watching them on the monitor like a training video, listening to them cry and blame everybody but themselves, while Sheriff Collins's voice crackles over the radio, saying his units are 2 minutes out. They came here tonight to seize my guns for the Homeowners Association, and instead, they're about to lose their freedom. That's how the night ends. But like most bad stories, it started with me just trying to be left alone. My name's Jake Walker. I wore a badge in Red Oak County for 12 years and nights. Mostly the kind of calls where you see the parts of people they usually keep hidden. I dealt with drunk fights, broken bones, kids who needed someone to tell the truth, meth labs that stank up a whole block, and courtrooms where lawyers twisted that truth until you barely recognized it. Somewhere along the line, the job turned into something I didn't sign up for, less about protecting people and more about checking boxes, less about what was right and more about what looked right on paper. So one day, I walked into the chief's office, took off my badge, set it on his desk, and that was that. I took the money I'd put away and bought 12 acres out past the last streetlight. Just cedar trees and sunburned grass and a gravel road. That didn't care who I used to be. I built a small house, then a workshop, then I took my granddad's old storm shelter and turned it into an armory, not some movie-style bunker with blue lights and spinning racks. Just concrete walls, steel door shelves lined with rifles I'd collected over the years. Ammo locked away, paperwork filed. Where it should be, nothing illegal, nothing dramatic, just an old ex-cop who still believed in taking care of his tools. Life was simple for a while. Mornings started with coffee on the front porch while the dogs ran the fence line. Like they owned it. Breath steaming in the cold air. Cicadas humming in the summer evenings. If a truck went past, you usually knew who it was. By the sound of the engine, and the unspoken rule out there was easy. You stay on your side of the fence, I stay on mine. We nod at each other in town, and that's about all the social life anybody expects. You know what I mean. Then, one month, the land across the county road sprouted survey flags, then heavy equipment, then street signs with names like Harmony View and Maple Bend, and up went a big stone entrance, Silver Creek Meadows, a deed-restricted community. Right underneath it, in smaller letters that ought to come with a warning label, were the 3 letters that keep whole YouTube channels alive. At first I figured fine, let them have their matching mailboxes and lawn rules. They're over there. I'm over here. The county road is God's way of telling us we don't need to talk. But Silver Creek didn't just bring houses. It brought a president, and that's when my peace and quiet started to crack. Her name was Melissa Warren, the kind of woman you can pick out of a crowd before she even opens her mouth. Pressed white blouse, clean bob haircut, expensive sunglasses, posture like she's got a yardstick taped to her spine, and a voice tuned to that firm. I'm in charge tone you hear from people who have never actually been in charge of anything more dangerous than a clipboard. She took that HOA presidency like it was a seat on the Supreme Court. And from the very beginning it was clear she loved one thing more than all the manicured lawns in Silver Creek control. I didn't meet her personally until one hot Saturday morning. The air was thick enough to chew, and I was on my porch, cleaning my granddad's lever action. Same way I'd done it 100 times, cloth across my knee. Barrel pointed in a safe direction. Slow, almost meditative. It's one of those routines you grow into, like sharpening a knife or tuning an engine. Your hands move on their own, and your brain finally gets quiet for a minute. Melissa came walking down the county road, with her teenage son drifting along behind her. Hood-up earbuds in the universal stance of a kid who'd rather be anywhere else. He didn't even look at me, but Melissa did. She stopped dead when she saw that rifle across my lap, eyes narrowing, like I'd just pulled a grenade pin. "Excuse me," she snapped, like I'd committed a crime against the sidewalk. I looked up, wiped a bit of oil off my fingers. Said, "Morning." "That is completely inappropriate," she shot back. Jabbing a finger at the gun, my son could be traumatized. I glanced at the kid. He was still staring at his phone. Probably wouldn't have noticed a marching band. I went back to cleaning. "Ma'am." I'm sitting on my own porch, handling a legally owned firearm, pointed in a safe direction. I said, calm. As I could, 12 years in uniform teaches you how not to rise to bait. "That doesn't make it acceptable," she hissed. "People in this community don't want to see weapons. This is a civilized neighborhood." I almost laughed right there, but I kept it level. "Good thing this isn't your neighborhood, then," I said, meeting her eyes. "This is my land." You could watch her jaw clench like a door hinge. Turned too tight. She yanked her son closer, whispered something about unstable ex-cops and stockpiling guns, and marched off like she'd just filed a formal complaint with the sky. And I remember thinking, yeah, this won't be the last time I hear from her. I was right. A few days later, my neighbor Carl rolled up in his dusty truck, leaned out the window and said, "You hear what they're saying about you over in Silver Creek?" I shook my head. And he told me straight. Melissa had been going house to house telling people I was some unstable ex-officer, hoarding weapons, scaring families, a threat to community safety. You know the usual script, just with my name taped on it, and it didn't stop there. I started finding glossy flyers stuck in my mailbox, wedged into my gate, tucked along the fence line. A picture of my entrance with big red letters. Unstable ex-officer, hoarding weapons, community safety risk. My heart rate didn't even bump. But I felt that old irritation, the kind that comes when someone lies about you loud enough that it starts echoing. Then came the uniforms. Not real uniforms, mind you, but those bargain bin polos that try to look official. Clear morning, I stepped out of my workshop and saw 3 men standing at my South Gate shirts, embroidered Silver Creek security and compliance clipboards, in hand stance, stiff like kids playing police. I walked down the gravel path, stopped on my side of the fence. The oldest one puffed himself up and said, "Good morning, sir. We're here on behalf of Silver Creek Meadows HOA to conduct a safety and compliance inspection of firearm storage on adjacent properties." I repeated that word adjacent, let it hang there a second, then said, "I'm not in your HOA." He pressed on. "We've had reports of visible firearm activity. We need to ensure your storage meets community safety expectations." That phrase, community safety expectations, is the kind of thing people invent when they don't actually have the law on their side. He slid a paper through the bars of my gate. "Per Section 4B of the Silver Creek Safety Mandate, we require temporary access," he said, with this smile, like the conversation was already over. I didn't take the paper, didn't even touch it. I just leaned close enough to read, and it didn't take 10 seconds for the red flags to pop. Wrong county seal, weird layout, made-up sections, and above all, HOAs do not have jurisdiction off their own property lines. I looked up at him and said, "This is fake, and even if it wasn't, it doesn't give you a single inch of authority on this side of that fence." The smile cracked, turned tight and thin. "Refusal to comply may result in an HOA citation," he said, like he was dropping a bomb behind him. One of the younger guys shifted, tapping the corner of his clipboard, eyes darting. He couldn't quite meet mine, and I heard him mumble. "We shouldn't be here." Barely loud enough, but I heard it. I took my phone out. "Gentlemen, I'm calling the sheriff," I said, calm as Sunday morning, and you'd have thought I pointed a gun at them. They backpedaled so fast they nearly tripped over each other, piled into their SUV, and took off in a cloud of dust. Sheriff Tom Collins showed up a few minutes later, stepped out of his cruiser, with that slow, heavy gait of a man who's seen it all. I handed him the paper. He didn't even take it, just leaned in, read it and snorted. "For reach," he said. "They're getting bold." He tapped the gate with his knuckles. "Watch yourself." "Jake, people like that don't take no kindly. They take it personal." He wasn't kidding. Over the next week or two, I could feel the air shift in town. People who used to wave now squinted like they were trying to place me from a news story. Flyers kept showing up. The story about me grew a little crazier every time it got repeated. And one evening, Collins pulled into my driveway again. Not casual. This time he walked up on the porch with a manila folder and a tired look. "We've been getting calls," he said. "Written complaints, lots of them all from Silver Creek." He sat down across from me, opened the folder, and started listing them off. I'd brandished weapons at children, threatened people on the road, talked like a paranoid man about defending my land by force. None of it true, but on paper, it stacked into something ugly. "You buying any of that?" I asked him. "Not a damn bit," he said. "But if they get enough signatures and enough scared neighbors, they can push for a red flag petition, try to get a judge to strip you of your guns for mental health reasons, at least temporarily." I just sat there, staring at the railing, feeling that shift inside from annoyed to something sharper. Like when you realize the bar fight is about to turn into somebody pulling a knife. So they turn me into the crazy ex-cop on paper and hope the system does the rest, I said. And he nodded. "That's about the size of it. I just wanted you to hear it from me before you heard it at 6 a.m. from a knock on your door." That's when I knew this wasn't gossip. It was strategy. And Melissa wasn't finished. The next big move came on a heavy afternoon with thunder building way off somewhere. I saw 4 figures at my gate, 3 security polos again, and one older guy in a blazer with a leather folder. The blazer stepped up, fixed his tie, like he was about to audition for court TV, and said, "Mr. Walker, I'm Daniel Rhodes, legal counsel for Silver Creek Meadows. You've been served an order for a mandatory safety inspection regarding your firearms. We need access to your property immediately." He held up the document. Like I was supposed to be impressed, I told him to hold it steady. And again, I read it without touching it. Wrong letterhead, wrong format. Photocopied signature, notary stamp with the wrong year, and that same basic problem. An HOA cannot invent authority. It doesn't have just because it sounds good in a meeting. "This isn't an order," I said. "It's a prop, and standing at my gate with forged legal documents is a felony." He stammered something, but I was already calling. Collins told him I had 4 men at my gate with fake papers trying to push their way in when the sheriff's cruiser rolled up. You could see the color drain right out of the blazer's face. Collins looked at the paper, shook his head, and told them, "Flat out, you boys leave now. And if I find out which one of you drafted this, I'll be seeing you from the other side of a holding cell." They left, but one of them didn't go far. After Collins drove off, I started back up the driveway. And that's when I heard the soft crunch of boots on gravel behind me. I turned and saw the young guard, from before the nervous one, walking toward the gate with both hands visible, and a big, overstuffed manila envelope held out like a white flag. He passed it through the bars and just stood there, breathing like he'd run a mile. "Sir," he said, voice shaking, "this has everything. Emails, meeting, notes, invoices, the plan, all of it. If she finds out I talked to you, she'll destroy me." She who I asked, even though we both knew. "Melissa," he whispered. "Ms. Warren, she's not just mad. You own guns, she's obsessed ever since that day. She saw you cleaning one on the porch. She's been telling the board you're a threat. Calling you a ticking time bomb, saying it's just a matter of time until something happens, and she'll be the one who didn't do enough." He told me about the money, $52,400 pulled from HOA funds labeled security consulting, an emergency safety operation, all authorized by Melissa, and where that money went. 2 contractors out of the city hired to come out in the middle of the night, break into my house, and retrieve my firearms in the name of public safety. She called it retrieval night, he said, eyes darting. "It's on the emails they're coming tomorrow night between 1 and 3 a.m. She said you'd be half asleep, and if anything went wrong, she'd blame me. She already drafted a statement saying I mismanaged the funds and hired them without her knowledge, but I didn't sign anything. She forged my initials. He looked like he was going to be sick. I stood there with that envelope in my hand, listening to this kid who thought a clipboard job would be easy money and ended up knee-deep in a felony. You did the right thing coming here, I told him. And he shook his head like he wasn't sure there was still such a thing as right. Then he said quietly, "Most of us over there know you're not who she says you are. We were just too afraid to say it," and walked back toward a neighborhood that suddenly looked a lot like a nest of guilty consciences. When he was gone, I took that envelope to my workshop, dumped it out on the steel bench, and read every line I saw Melissa's name on authorizations. Her comments in emails, her instructions about timing the operation between 1 and 3 a.m. Her calling it a community safety seizure, her writing. That if there was any trouble, they'd leverage prior complaints to establish mental instability. Yeah, that happened. It was all there in black and white. There are moments in your life when fear would make sense and just doesn't show up. What I felt instead was a cold kind of calm, like when you step into a room and instantly see the layout exits and where the trouble's coming from. I knew what was about to happen, when it was going to happen, and exactly where it would happen, my hallway and my armory door. And I still had a sheriff on my side, and a house wired with more cameras than a pawn shop. I powered up my monitor, bank checked all 6 feeds, gate, driveway, backyard, porch, hallway, armory entrance, then opened the small control panel. Tested the locks on the armory door, the magnetic clamps, the deadbolts, the speaker inside that room, the motion-triggered floodlights outside, and the silent alarm line straight to Collins's phone. I walked down the hall, opened the armory, looked around at the racks, the safes, the old storm shelter bones. Under all that steel, closed the door again and spun the wheel until it clicked home. And somewhere deep down, I thought tomorrow night, this room isn't going to be a vault. It's going to be a cage. When the time came, I didn't pace, I didn't sit at a window with a shotgun. I sat in the workshop with the lights low, dogs asleep at my feet, monitors glowing soft. And just before 1 a.m., both dogs lifted their heads and gave that low growl that comes from someplace older than language. A second later, the motion alert pinged on camera 3 by the south fence. 2 dark shapes slipping over like they'd done this before. One tall one, shorter with a backpack sagging off his shoulders. They moved with purpose. Not like kids messing around, like men who thought they were on a job that had been cleared by someone important. I watched them cross my yard, checked again that I was recording everything with audio, then saw them at the back door. The tall one tried the handle, shook his head. The short one pulled a little device, glass punch, quick pop on the window. They slipped inside my house like raccoons. You know, the kind that don't realize there's a trap already set around the lid of the trash can. I picked up the radio, kept my voice low. "Tom, it's Jake. They're here. 2 suspects inside, just came through the back window heading toward the hallway. I'm in the workshop, not engaging." He came back immediately. "Copy, Jake. Units rolling 7 to 9 minutes. Keep eyes on them. Don't play hero." On the hallway camera, I watched them move room to room with that fake tactical swagger, elbows too wide, muzzles all over the place, clearing corners like they'd seen it in a video game, until they reached the armory door. The tall one let out a soft whistle and muttered, "Whack, but this has to be it." He pulled out a folded piece of paper. That same fake order, flashed it at his partner like it was a badge, then spun the wheel. I had left the door unlocked on purpose, and they stepped inside my vault, like kids walking into a toy store after closing. They started pointing at cases' safes, whispering what they'd grabbed first. And I waited, let them get both feet in, let the door clear. Then I pressed the lock control in my workshop. There was a deep metal slam that shook the camera feed for half a second as the magnets kicked in. Bolts sliding home with a sound that said the world had just changed size for those 2 men. They spun around. The tall one lunged for the wheel, jerked it. Nothing hit it again. Nothing. The short one's breathing went shallow real fast. The mic picked up everything. What the hell? It locked it. Locked. This wasn't supposed to happen. Call Melissa. Call her now, she said he'd be asleep. She said he was unstable. She said. I flipped on the speaker inside the vault and leaned into my mic. Breaking into my house was stupid enough, I said, calm, steady. Breaking into my armory. That was suicidal. Silence, like someone hit mute on their brains. The tall one stared straight into the camera. Chest heaving. The short one started pounding on the door with his fists, yelling, "Let us out, man!" she said. This was legal. She said the HOA had authority. We thought this was community stuff. Every word you're saying is being recorded. I told them Sheriff Collins is on his way. Every second you stay in that room is one more felony stacked on your file. Sit down, keep your hands off my guns, and think about how much you trusted a woman who never even set foot on this land. They kept yelling, shifting from tough guy to terrified pretty quick, and I turned the volume down to something my ears could live with. Watched the minutes crawl by. Watched the red and blue lights finally flicker across the tree line. On the gate camera, 2 cruisers rolled up slowly. No sirens, just steady engines. I met Collins and Deputy Harris at the porch, handed Collins the tablet with the live feed and said, "You're going to like this one." He watched enough to see the break and the crawling through the window, the armory door, the slam, and heard the phrase, "Call Melissa." She said. This was legal. And he just let out a low, tired whistle. "Yeah," he said. "That'll do." Inside, he stopped in front of the vault, listened to the muffled pounding, then looked at me. "You got good audio on this?" he asked. "Crystal," I said. And he nodded once. "All right, let's harvest them." I keyed in the release code. Spun the wheel, let the locks disengage, and opened the doors about 2 inches. "No more," Collins shouted. "Sheriff's office, step out one at a time, hands where I can see them," and they came out in single file. Tall, one shaking so hard, the light on his vest flickered short. Practically crawling, babbling about how she said it was all covered, and we thought this was an HOA thing. Harris cuffed them and walked them out. And on the porch, I handed Collins that original manila envelope from Ethan. "There's your brains behind this," I said. "Money trail emails. Timeline, every bit of it, with Melissa's name on it." He flipped through a few pages and nodded slowly. "This is going straight to the DA. Not in the morning tonight," he said, and for the first time in weeks, I felt that knot in my chest loosen. The courtroom wasn't some big dramatic TV setup, just old wood benches, stale air, a tired judge who'd seen enough nonsense to have zero patience left. But it felt like the whole town was in there. Reporters, county folks, and plenty of Silver Creek residents who suddenly looked like people realizing the person they voted for had set their whole neighborhood on fire. The case was Silver Creek Meadows HOA versus Jake Walker. Their lawyer tried to spin it like they were just seeking reasonable access to my property for safety inspections. Said my unsecured firearms posed a danger to their community. Even played a little edited clip of my armory door opening that somehow skipped the part where the intruders broke in through my window. Then the prosecutor for the county stood up, plugged in a laptop, and said, "Your Honor, we have full unedited video with audio, and once that started rolling, you could feel the room change. The jump over the fence, the window, punch, the creeping down my hallway, the fake order in their hands, the door closing the slam, their voices screaming. 'Call Melissa.' She said it was legal. My voice telling them. Breaking into my armory was suicidal. It was all there. You didn't need a narrator." Ethan testified too, hands sweating, voice shaking at first, then getting stronger as he laid it out. The $52,400, the off-book payments, the retrieval night plan, the forged initials, the board meetings, where Melissa called me dangerous and promised to handle the situation. The judge listened, flipped through documents, and finally closed the file in front of her, like she was done with a bad novel. Petition denied. She said denied with prejudice. This association has no authority whatsoever over Mr. Walker's property. Furthermore, based on the evidence of forgery, conspiracy misuse of funds, and the orchestration of a criminal break in this matter will be referred to the district attorney for immediate review. Just like that, the part where I was supposedly the threat evaporated, and Melissa's world started to burn. A few days later, I was out at my east fence adjusting a hinge when my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. There at her house, I wiped my hands, walked to the edge of my property, and looked across the county road. 2 sheriff's cruisers rolled into Silver Creek, turned down her perfect little street, and stopped in front of her perfect little house. Neighbors watched from porches and behind curtains, some of them probably remembering those flyers she'd handed them. With my name on them, Collins walked up to her door, like he'd done it 1,000 times. She came out in a pressed blouse, hair just right, outrage already loaded in her tone. "This is harassment. This is political. You can't do this to me." And he just read the charges one by one. Forgery, criminal conspiracy, misuse of HOA funds, attempted unlawful seizure, trespass by proxy endangering public safety. The usual greatest hits when people play games with power and get caught. Her legs almost gave out when he said, "You're under arrest." He cuffed her, not rough, just firm, walked her to the cruiser, while the big HOA banner by the clubhouse flapped in the wind behind her like some bad joke. She twisted her head and yelled across the road at me, "This isn't over. Walker, you hear me? This isn't." And then the door closed with a quiet click that cut her off mid-sentence. Collins glanced over, gave me one small nod, and they drove away, oh sirens. No drama, just the long, slow sound of consequences. Standing there with my hand on that fence post, feeling the rough cedar under my palm, I had this thought. I haven't been able to shake. My story ended with the system doing the right thing, with evidence winning, with the loud liar getting walked into a squad car, while the quiet guy on the hill got his life back. But that's not how it ends for everybody. For a lot of people, the flyer becomes the truth. The fake paperwork becomes good enough. The HOA story becomes the official story. And the guy minding his own business ends up as a headline that never tells his side. So that's my question to you listening to this. Where is the line between community rules and full-on abuse of power? Was I right to set that trap and let those guys lock themselves in my vault? Or do you think I went too far by letting them walk into it? If you'd been on a jury with this story in front of you, would you see me as the stubborn ex-cop who doesn't like being told what to do? Or the guy who knew his rights and refused to let someone with a title and a fake document walk over them? And how many Melissas do you think are out there right now using fear and paperwork to control people who don't have cameras or sheriffs or a paper trail on their side? If you've ever dealt with an HOA that pushed too far a boss who hid behind policy while they ruined someone, or a neighbor who turned gossip into a weapon, I want to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments. Tell me what you think was right, what was wrong, and what justice should have looked like in your situation. And if you want to hear more stories from the wrong side of the fence, more times when regular people got pushed until they finally pushed back, hit. Subscribe and stick around. Because as long as I've got a voice and a camera, I'm going to keep telling these stories, and you're always welcome to pull up a chair and listen.